This, I think, is a third.
Yes. Okay.
Great. Next one also will do. I mean, this is the cover page, cover slide. The next slide.
No?
Right, ma'am. Correct. All right. Very good. Noon, close to noon now. A very good noon to all the students, and hope you've been able to devote some time to case study. As I had mentioned, you were required to read up a few cases. That is, I know it's not possible to go through all of them, but the Enron, and I'm told that Enron is being featured on Netflix as a documentary. So I think it would be a very good idea over the weekend to watch this documentary on Netflix and update yourself on what's happening, because Jeff Skilling, he was released in February 2020. A year ago he was released. Who is Jeff Skilling? Once you watch the documentary, you will know who is Kenneth Lay and who is and what was George Bush Jr.'s role in the entire thing, Enron fiasco. And who were the others who were benefited? Who was the one who committed suicide? And who was the one who died a month before his sentencing? And who was this Skilling who resorted to what you call MTM accounting method rather than having the cost accounting method being done in the company, which saw sea changes being brought to the accounting system in the company. And the books were manipulated over a period of time. All that they wanted was to make profit, and which also compelled the employees. In fact, a new policy. Once Skilling was working for McKinsey, and he was hired by the owner of the of Enron. Enron started in 1985. It was a merger of two companies, in Houston, USA. And then Kenneth wanted expert advice, so Kenneth hired McKinsey. It's a very well-known, a very renowned consulting firm, and they handed over. They recommended Jeffrey Skilling to be on board as the advisors, as one of the consultants, and he was doing so well, and he shared a very good rapport with the owner, Kenneth, and it was decided that he is going to be brought on board the board of directors of Enron. And that's when things were in control, in his charge, in his control. He decided to revamp the structure of accounting, and also he brought in policies which required employees to work, work what do you call it? Scratch their heels off and really dig in their heels and really work hard, because he framed a policy of profit orientation, which means that maximization of profits. That's what the management wants, maximization of profits from the employees. So then what was to be read between the lines was by hook or by crook. So all the employees were into it in order to retain, because if they had to retain their job, they were required to maximize profits for the company. So ethics was swept under the carpet. Rather, it was shoved out of the window completely, and all types of unethical accounting practices were being resorted to. And then you had to add fuel to the fire. You had auditors Arthur Anderson coming in, and they were a famed accounting firm, auditing firm, but they also they decided to look the other way when all this was happening right under their nose. Manipulation of the books of accounts and everything, inflated prices being shown, and fair market price rather than the actual book price of their assets being. That's when auditing firms decide to look the other way when there's wrong happening in the company. That's when people they are emboldened. The manipulators in the company, they get they get a shot in the arm, kind of, and they further the cause of unethical practices, and that's why it went on and ultimately ended up in a debacle. So It was a huge company, the seventh largest company in the US, from 85 billion, 70 billion worth company to the share price was reduced to, I think, 11 cents eventually. So the whole thing it caught the eyes of the court, the federal court, and everybody was questioned and sentenced to imprisonment. And there were some tragedies in between. But Skilling, the brain behind the entire debacle, he got, I think it was a 12 or 24-year term, but because of good conduct, he was released in February 2020. And as the news reports are doing the rounds, he is at it again. That is, he's establishing his own company, and millions of investors lost everything in this Enron debacle. But that aside, this guy is out to make more money. He's starting his own company, and so please do watch this documentary, and we can discuss. I think once you watch it in the form of a documentary, just like you had Scam 1992 on net. I think it was Netflix only, Harshad Mehta's. So that makes things clearer. When you watch documentaries like these, it makes things a lot clearer. And you'll be able to understand the case really from close quarters. Well, for those who are uninitiated in this, that is, were not there last time, or even if you were there and you want and it is definitely necessary that we do a recap of what we discussed last time. I'll quickly skim through the recap of what we discussed last time. The topic which we are looking at is corporate governance. And I started with giving you a meaning of the term corporate, and which has been derived from the Latin term corpus, which means body. And also you have corporeal, corporal. That's why in school said that in schools you should ban corporal punishment, that is punishment to the body of the child, the student. So corpus means body. And why body? Because it's an artificial person, and an artificial person is one that is recognized by law as having and can sell property, can deal, can trade in the property, in its assets. So that's the legal entity that is bestowed on an artificial person by law. So a company is an artificial person. Coming to the next word, governance, which means that it's the macro term which includes everything, like, setting norms, strategic vision, direction, formulating. You have your mission and vision statements being formulated. Mission and vision statements are not fancy melodramatic statements that companies formulate. They formulate these statements. It's by law that you need to have it done, because your memorandum of association and articles of association, which you might have learned, that you are important documents which you require when you start your company. Those documents must contain your mission and vision statements too. So formulating that, and then overseeing the management and organization performance, also keeping in mind, and while monitoring the performance, also keeping in mind that the public interest is not in any way hampered. Maximization of profits is there, but they will not mention it on paper. But while doing so, there are boundaries which are set. So governance is what sets the boundaries for all kinds of functioning, whether prudent, which requires prudence, ethical practices, and also functioning within the gamut of law. So prudently, ethically, and legally, what all has to be done in order to run the company is what is called governance. And if you are asked a question, what is the difference between management and governance? We'll be coming to that PPT later. Management is a micro aspect of it, which involves day-to-day functioning and administration. So it is an executive body. There's a governing body, there's an executive body, right? So it's an executive body that takes care of the day-to-day functioning of the company, which is known as management. And I had made a mention about SEBI. I talked about the Sarbanes-Oxley law, and also the Cadbury's report. What is SEBI? What is Sarbanes-Oxley, which in short is known as SOX, and what is the Cadbury's report? There are these pertain to 3 different countries. SEBI was established and was every such organization, statutory body which is established by virtue of a law. So in 1992, India saw the establishment of SEBI, which is Securities and Exchange Board of India. And you also had a similar body in US, that is SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission. SEBI, when it was formed, it was a non-statutory body. And Harshad Mehta, thanks to Harshad Mehta's, what I should say, skill of hands or sleight of hands, or his whatever brain game that he played, thanks to that, in 1995, SEBI became a statutory body, which means that it could on its own take action against defaulters. So that means more teeth were given to this body. It was a watchdog. In short, it was a watchdog which could actually bite. Sarbanes-Oxley is an act which came into force because of the Enron debacle. So that's the SOX legislation there. And Cadbury's report was required in the US for similar reasons. There were all these scams and scandals happening in the UK as well. So you had the Adrian Cadbury Commission being formed in 1992. You had them also. So around the same time, it's only a decade's time, 90 to 2000, 2002, a decade or two, and around 12 years time. Between that time, you had all these statutory watchdogs being appointed in order to keep a close watch on all those who are playing with public money. So when you're known as a public limited company, you are accountable. You have to function in a transparent manner. You have to have your auditing done regularly, because auditing is not something a fancy choice of yours. It is a statutory requirement. It is mandated by law that auditing has to be done. And it is expected. It need not be expressly mentioned anywhere. It is implied that auditing firms must behave or must function independently. They cannot afford to be influenced by the auditee. So that was what I mentioned last time about SEBI and these legislations. I also talked about what were the other things I mentioned. Yeah, I think this was roughly what we discussed in a little detail. And I've mentioned that we will go through some of the case studies. Now, we also talked about business and ethics being, and the two terms being oxymorons of each other, where, ethics is something which, if you have to write or quote ethics, it would be like this. Ethics is knowing the difference between what you have a right to do and what is right to do. So what you have a right to do and what is right to do, and to know the difference. So what rights you have and what is right to do. When you know this, you're functioning in an ethical manner. And 99% of the business houses cannot follow absolute ethical practices. And since it is understood, this is a fact which is implied, we have these statutory bodies which enforce ethical practices. That's when I mentioned that the Companies Act 2013 has included clauses which enforce corporate governance, which enforce whistleblower clause. It also it talks about these aspects in more detail. So when it is mentioned in a legislation, it's implied that it is mandatory. So every public limited company, especially one which is listed, must have a corporate governance clause which is written down. It cannot be oral. It has to be a written down clause. It's not just a clause. In fact, some companies have an entire booklet on what is their corporate governance practices. The other thing I wanted to mention is CSR, which is corporate social responsibility. So these are clauses which are mentioned in the Companies Act 2013. So we talked about that legislation also. So this was a recap of what we discussed last time. Now, today, what I propose to do, I thought I would have two sessions, but we're just having this session now, and we will be talking about whistleblowing, not today. We'll be talking about one of the cases which I asked you to read up, not the Enron. Enron we can discuss in a more qualified manner. We can discuss when we meet next week after I believe you have watched the documentary or any kind of a video which explains the entire Enron debacle. I think documentary you can't watch in over a weekend. I mean, if it's a series like Scam 1992, you will not be able to watch it over the weekend and finish it. But go through some videos which explain these well, the Enron debacle well. So Enron we can discuss in detail next week. Today we can look at another case which is equally what I would say sensational, and it talks about one man who was hailed and he failed and then he was jailed. So that is the Satyam case that we're going to be talking about, right? So even before that, I wanted to share with you, perhaps your faculty's members might have guided you on this, on how is a case study done. How do you do a case study? Now सब लोग बोलते हैं कि case study करो या फिर you study cases more than theory, or you derive theory out of cases. All this is said, but how is it to be done? So I'll give you a quick a glance. I don't have it on the PPT, but a glance at what case study entails. Okay, if you look at a case analysis, or how do you look at, you have a case in front of you, right? Your faculty has given you a case, and asked you to prepare a case study analysis of it, or we'll have a case study of it. So this case is in front of you. What does the case contain? It contains a story. It contains characters in the story. It has a storyline. It has this script which is scripted by the characters in the story. It has got all those pitfalls where there are the graph might show climbs and drops. So it has all those peaks and the pitfalls. So the peaks and the pitfalls are to be highlighted, but more so the pitfalls. That is where what went wrong. So the issues need to be highlighted. So you have the outline of the story, you've got the characters in the story, you've got the issues, and then what went wrong with those issues, what happened, what was the consequence of those wrong decisions that were taken, and what could have been done. So now you're slowly studying the case in detail, because when you're following a proper framework, you're studying it in detail, and then you decide as a student of business, you will find out alternative ways out or alternative solutions. So you will present alternative solutions, and perhaps from that you will pick up one best that you feel is suited to solve this case. What could have been done? How this could have been done in a better way so that this debacle would not have happened? How progress and growth need not be where ethics need not be compromised. If you want to have sustained progress and growth, ethics need not be compromised. So how it can be done? Of course, for a fresh business graduate, it's difficult, because you need to know the details of everything, governance and management. You should know it as the back of your hand. Yet you can make attempts to find out how things could have been done differently. So a case study analysis need not have a conclusive end. It can have alternatives suggested by you. And it also, there are a couple of methods of case study analysis. And one very short method is the strength and weakness. That is a SWOT analysis that you employ for various other factors. For other analysis, you use a SWOT method. That is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So you can employ the SWOT analysis also to cases, but all cases you cannot employ the SWOT analysis. They do not qualify for a SWOT analysis. So you will have to read the case once, just as a, have a cursory glance over the case and then decide what methodology you're going to employ. So if you have to crystallize it, there are 4 clear steps in a case analysis framework. The first one is define the problem. The second is alternative courses of action are to be formulated. Okay. Third is alternatives are analyzed in terms of their strengths and weaknesses. Alternatives are to be analyzed. Simply suggesting alternatives is not enough. And fourth, an alternative is accepted and a course of action is recommended. The fourth stage is not mandatory though, because you may leave it at alternatives, or you may go ahead and suggest one which you feel is most suitable or which you feel you should recommend. So that's how the 4 stages are. Reading and writing down the character sketch and everything is not mentioned in these stages specifically, but when you come to the problem, that is the first stage. That is, problem is defined, alternative courses of action are formulated. That's number 2. Number 3, alternatives are analyzed. I hope you have a clear idea of what an analysis means. Yeah. An analysis is drawing a deeper interpretation of something. That's an analysis. In terms of strengths and weaknesses, so which aspects are strong? Now, for example, goodwill of Mr. Raju was really strong, and he won the golden peacock. Satyam Computers won the golden peacock award once upon a time, and which year it was that we'll be seeing, and won the Golden Peacock Award for Best Ethical Practices in Business. And how the whole thing plummeted over the years, and how he landed with a 7-year jail term. I think in 2015 he and his brothers were handed a 7-year jail term. So how it came to that? How it came to not do this? And the fourth step is an alternative is accepted and a course of action is recommended. And I'm just repeating these 4 if I was too fast. A case analysis framework comprises of 4. There's a 4-step process. First one is define, a problem is defined. Second is alternative courses of action are formulated. Third, alternatives are analyzed in terms of their strengths and weaknesses. And fourth, an alternative is accepted and a course of action is recommended. These are the 4 stages. You can have alternative ways of case study analysis as well. This is largely followed. Strengths, weaknesses, definitely any case will have. Opportunities and threats you may not get. So that's why the entire SWOT cannot be employed. Some cases, entire SWOT, some cases you cannot. So strengths and weaknesses you will definitely have in every case. That's how you will do a case study analysis. From that perspective, you are required to study. So we are going to be looking at, now it is 12:18. Okay. Ma'am, the class would end, session would end at 12:30, right?
12:30, ma'am. Yeah. So you can.
Okay, so effectively we have 11 minutes and hope to conclude this.
So maybe you can conclude one case.
One case.
Yeah.
Yes. So we will be looking at this Satyam case. So there were these 2 brothers, Mr. Ramaraju and Ramalinga Raju, 2 brothers.
You want me to take the presentation ahead? Or it's on the title slide?
Just go through. I prepared this. This is all about corporate governance. Can we just go through? Because I was thinking of, just run through the next slide, ma'am.
Yeah.
Flip to the
I'm
next
running.
slide.
Yeah.
Yes. It's not moving here. I think, I don't know, on mine it isn't showing.
Students, are you all able to see?
No, ma'am.
Yeah, the next has come.
Now it's
Yeah. So the system by which, ma'am, the previous one, please.
Okay. This one?
इसके पहले?
Okay.
नहीं, इसे भी पहले शायद.
now?
No, I'm seeing this one. How different is management from governance?
Yeah. What is it
I
that
think
you
the
want
rest
to
are also
tell me?
same.
What is it that you want?
Okay. Governance. Please take it back to governance. Previous. Iske pehle. The previous one.
Purpose and objective of corporate governance.
Okay. Yeah. Put it there. Put it there.
Yeah.
Okay. The basic purpose of corporate governance is to monitor those parties within a company which control the resources owned by investors. So please always keep in mind, we're talking about corporate governance. Even if you're discussing cases, these cases are definitely a corporate governance failure, examples of corporate governance failure. And what went wrong was there are two entities. One is in one's hand you have the control, and the other you have the ownership. The ownership is divested from the control. So ownership is in the hands of the shareholders, and control is in the hands of the governing body, the management. Okay, it becomes even worse when you have promoters becoming directors. I hope you know the life cycle of a company. You might have studied about the life cycle of a company, right? So you have promoters. These guys get together and they decide, okay, company start kar lete hain. And they have all these huge plans and all that for starting a company. So they are the promoters, and then they send feelers around, and then they try to garner revenue or other resources, and they want to float this company. When they float a formal body as a company, now that you have a one man company also under the legislation 2013 Companies Act, you start a company. That's when you have to prepare your memorandum and all that. So you have to become you either appoint other directors, or you yourself become a director. So promoters then becoming directors. So you can imagine what kind of vested interest they will have. Then they feel that okay, अगर हमने अपने ही पैसे लगा दिए तो उतना तो नहीं grow कर पाएंगे, इसलिए let's borrow from the public. And that's when they issue IPOs and all. When IPOs are issued, then they are brought, they come under the radar of they begin to be scanned by the watchdogs. Okay, because you're going to be dealing with public money. So then the accountability comes into play, and then you are required to be transparent. Because if it's a partnership firm, if it's a private limited company, then you don't have to be, it's just money making that you are indulging in. That much of ethical practices is not required, right? I mean, it's for everyone to see. But when it's a joint stock company, public limited company, you're accountable to the public. So you must understand that all this is happening, all these scams are happening simply because a handful of people who are running the show were trying to hoodwink, were trying to cheat the actual owners of the company, the stakeholders of the company. Shareholders are just shareholders are just one part of the spectrum of stakeholders, right? You've got creditors, you've got angel investors, you've got the society at large. Because today, doing good for the society is not a work of charity; it is a legal requirement. So by companies, so all these are stakeholders, and if you're going to be rubbing them the wrong way, you are indulging in unethical practices. That reminds me of Nestle. Nestle is in a soup again. You might be reading about Nestle, what's happening, right? So Maggie has always been an unhealthy food. And in 2015, Maggie, 38,000 tons of Maggie packets were withdrawn from the shelves in India. They claim that they do not have, the Maggie does not contain monosodium glutamate. And once when the lab tests were done, not just monosodium glutamate, but even lead was found 1,000 times more than the permissible limit. Lead and MSG, which is known as, what is that taste? It's a Ajinomoto. Ajinomoto. It enhances the taste. So this is that definitely carcinogenic. We all know that Maggie is bad for health, and yet while eating Maggie, we read the news about Maggie being detrimental to health. Anyway, let's not get distracted by that. That is the current Nestle is the current currently in the news for wrong reasons. Coming back to the Satyam issue, I'll tell you quickly what went wrong with the Satyam issue. Ma'am, Sonali ma'am. I think ma'am is busy. I'll talk to her later. What I was thinking of doing now is, since we have just 40 minutes for a session, I was thinking that if I record what I want to say in a little more detail. Now I'm in a hurried manner, I'm speaking, but I would like to be, I would like more information to transpire between us. So if I could record some of the sessions and send audio tracks, would you appreciate this as, so that you can at leisure, you can listen to the audio tracks and relate to what is being said in the class. I think that also will save time. I mean, we can pack in a lot more information in limited time. So this what happened is, see, Satyam Computers was, I think it was 1987 that Satyam Computers was, yes, 1987 in Hyderabad. It was founded by these two brothers, and it began with 20 employees offering IT and BPO services. It was listed in the BSE in 1991. And soon the company got its first Fortune 500 client, Deere and Company, and it was growing by leaps and bounds. So Satyam soon became the fourth largest IT software exporter after TCS, Wipro, and Infosys. So it was growing, as I said, by leaps and bounds. At its peak of success, Satyam employed more than 50,000 employees and operated in 60 plus countries. And this was it was touted as one of the best examples of success story, starting from scratch. The firm was worth 1 billion in 2003, and by 2008 it was worth 2 billion. And you know in 2008 what happened. Okay, there was this you had the great American Great Depression in 1939. After that you had dot-com boom, and then you had 2008. There was a huge depression, into economic depression in 2008. So many things changed in the year 2008. But in the interim, when Satyam was really flying high and was everybody was hailing Mr. Raju as one who's who's got the brains, who's got the guts. It's that at that time, I think probably success went to his head, and he decided to you venture into areas which he was not familiar with, and that was real estate. He decided to, in fact, he invested somewhere in some real estate, and it was called Metas Ventures or something. And then he was using Satyam the board of Satyam to acquire Metas, which was owned by him. So then it signaled, it gave wrong, it sent the signals to the shareholders. The shareholders smelt a rat, and then inquiries were held, and then skeletons started tumbling out of the cupboard. And so he had thought, he's doing so well in the IT business, so he would probably be using his acumen in the real estate business as well. And it was like, too much money and too much power corrupts absolutely. And that was the case that happened with Mr. Ramalinga Raju. To the tune of 7,000 crore, he was found, he admitted to having committed fraud to the tune of 7,000 crores. And his calculations all went wrong because of the 2008 depression, and even the price of real estate had plummeted drastically. It fell in 2008. And once he was hailed, as I said, he was given awards for ethical practices, the best ethical practices that you could find, and that went to his head. What he did was, if you look at what exactly happened, he began inflating the quarterly profits in order to meet analyst expectations. You're inflating your books of account in order to meet analyst expectations. It's something like, Mr. Khan from Bollywood, he keeps churning out movies which are, kindergarten level movies. and he declares that it's a 100 crore box office hit. One certain Mr. Khan, I don't know his first name. Okay. So recently also there was a movie which was as good as kindergarten level. So that way, these guys, what they do is they inflate the books of inflate the quarterly profits inside, and that's manipulation of the books of accounts. He overstated quarterly revenues by 75% and profits by 97%. And he was using his own computer. Mr. Ramalinga Raju was doing this on his personal computer to create a number of bank statements in order to inflate the balance sheet with cash that simply did not exist. The company's global head for internal audit, he created fake customer identities and fake invoices in order to inflate the revenue. And Mr. Raju went, and if this was not enough, Mr. Raju went to the extent of creating records of fake employees and withdrawing salaries on their name to the tune of $3 million every month. This was what he did. And everything crumbled like a pack of cards, and he was jailed with his brother. So this is makes for interesting case study. But this is a story. This is how it how the graph went up and came down crashing. Satyam Computers was then it was Mahindra who took over Satyam Computers for 1/3 of its market price, and that's a story of this tragedy that ended in a tragedy. So then, how you would put this in the different what I said steps in the case study methodology? I think that's for you to see. If you could maintain a book on only case studies, it will be great. And because all your future, well, that is whether it is your present as a student and your future as a manager, it's cases that you are going to be studying. So how do you analyze the case? First, please update yourself on case study analysis very well. And then when you have a story in hand like like this one, you will put the necessary information. You'll do the slotting of it. You'll slot it under the different heads, categorization under the different heads. So this was the case of the Satyam Computers debacle. What went wrong? We know absolute unethical practices that were followed, and corporate governance being thrown out of the window. So I think I end for now. I have exceeded by 2 minutes, and thank you for listening to me. And Sonali ma'am, can
Yeah,
you? Yeah, I was just trying to. I was suggesting that if whatever more I want to say, if I can record it and send those audio tracks, so would it be comfortable sharing it with the students?
Perfect.
Yeah, because there's more I want to say, but the time is a big constraint, as I said.
Yeah, I
So
understand.
next, yeah. So next, as you suggested, next we can have a a combined session of 40,
So Monday,
40 minutes.
Tuesday, you tell me, I can give you. Okay.
I'll tell you the dates. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we can have correct. We can okay now. Please keep your case study on, and that is the Enron case. We'll study the Yes Bank and a couple of more cases. Before we move on to, we have to do whistleblowing. We have to do CSR. We have to do some environment related legislations. So we have these sessions. So corporate governance will wind up in the next session because we'll be making a transition to whistleblowing. So thank you, class, and have a wonderful and safe weekend. Bye-bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.